It seems like you can't go a day without more bad news about Canada. The land of hockey and plaid shirts isn't doing very well these days, and there isn't a lot of hope on the horizon right now. The standard of living is collapsing faster than an avalanche, and it's only picking up speed. The reality Canada faces is stark. With the weakest growth in real GDP per capita among any developed economy in the world, 3 years straight of falling life expectancy, skyrocketing inflation, rising crime, housing collapse, and a crumbling healthcare system, more and more Canadians are making the decision to leave forever. Canada has consistently fallen behind other developed economies, particularly when contrasted with the United States. Over the past 5 years, Canada's business sector has experienced an average decline of 0.3%, whereas the US has witnessed a growth of 1.7%. Canada's unprecedented reversal in productivity over the last 5 years, which has led to a decline in real GDP per capita. In this video, we're looking at the reality of Canada's falling standard of living and what it means for all Canadians, as well as the warning it sends to the rest of the world. Canada's standard of living has been steadily going down, and the country is witnessing a significant exodus as many individuals are seeking to depart the country. This trend is not surprising when considering the underlying issues, particularly the state of the economy. Wages are barely growing as prices skyrocket, and Canada has huge issues with its falling standard of living. Canada's plummeting standard of living primarily comes down to problems with 5 things: a crumbling healthcare system, mass immigration making life worse, a bad business environment, housing being unaffordable, life expectancy dropping. Canada is falling behind in all these areas, and it's time to take a serious look at what's going wrong, starting with healthcare. The deterioration of the healthcare system across Canada is clear for anybody who's had to seek healthcare in the past few years. It's much worse than ever before. Access to timely and efficient healthcare services has become increasingly scarce, leading to significant repercussions on the overall quality of life and life expectancy. A disturbing lack of primary care, overflowing emergency departments, extremely long surgical waits, constant staffing shortages, out-of-date infrastructure and equipment, poor funding, and failing facilities are all bringing Canada's healthcare system down. This costs lives, including through things like misdiagnosis. A recent horrific example comes from the city of Nanaimo, British Columbia, where the tragic passing of a 23-year-old woman from Nanaimo occurred due to misdiagnosis.
Sophia was a 23-year-old mental health worker.
She was just a go-getter. She came out of university, she really wanted to help people.
Last March, her health started to decline. She would take a leave of absence in June and consulted with doctors at a walk-in site since she didn't have a family physician of her own.
Sophia was among the many in Canada who don't have a family physician. She faced challenges in obtaining proper medical care for her deteriorating health. Numerous false diagnoses led her astray in the spring of last year and caused her illness to get worse and worse. By the time she finally received an accurate diagnosis about the infection she had, it was too late, and she had contracted sepsis. Sophia tragically passed away in November of last year, the victim of an easily curable illness which hadn't been correctly diagnosed for more than 7 months, despite her repeated visits to the ER and walk-in clinics to find out what was wrong and treat it properly. Sophia was the victim of Canada's extremely disturbing lack of careful and professional medical attention in Canada's crowded, crumbling healthcare system and overflowing emergency rooms. And for more and more Canadians, the harsh reality of the healthcare system is leading to a much lower standard of living. The fact is that the healthcare system's shortcomings remain largely unaddressed, with repercussions extending beyond physical well-being to less economic and social stability for the whole country. Then we come to the mass immigration swamping Canada, which is directly linked to the pressures on the healthcare system. With Trudeau promising to bring in 500,000 immigrants per year, the healthcare system can't even begin to keep pace. The huge influx of 1.2 million new immigrants in 2023 has exerted immense pressure, causing housing costs to skyrocket. To contextualize this figure, it surpasses the populations of most Canadian cities and 8 of the country's 13 provinces and territories. Trudeau's emphasis on high levels of immigration aimed at boosting GDP overall has worsened GDP individually. While population growth has surged, economic growth has failed to keep pace, leading to what some have termed a per capita recession. Despite government assurances of strong aggregate GDP growth, the reality for the average Canadian is one of diminishing economic prospects. Even for those who are more on the left of the political spectrum or support the liberal ideology, the mass immigration policy of the Trudeau government doesn't make sense. It's not good for Canadians, including existing first-generation immigrants trying to build a better life. Taking in millions of immigrants puts a big strain on resources and worsens existing issues, particularly with housing prices and the suffering healthcare system. The disconnect between the government and the people of Canada is palpable, even with members within the Trudeau administration expressing concerns about the widening gap between policy and reality. Immigration should prioritize the interests of its own citizens rather than serving as a social welfare or job-seeking program for individuals from other nations. It should not be exploited to suppress wages or provide employers with an endless stream of low-wage laborers, nor should it be employed as a social engineering experiment aimed at reducing Canada's historical populations to minority status. Relentless immigration has driven relentless demand for housing, resulting in exorbitant house prices, particularly evident in Metro Vancouver and Metro Toronto. The misconception that urban areas can infinitely absorb population influxes has transformed many regions into congested, environmentally compromised zones, resembling the very conditions from which recent immigrants sought to get away in the first place. It couldn't be clearer. Canadians don't want the huge wave of immigrants coming in. Canadians want better wages, better housing options, and better health care. But playing politics and bringing in new legions of immigrants appears to be Trudeau's priority, not addressing the actual problems in the country. The unattractiveness of Canada as a place to start a business and declining purchasing power of Canadians is another key reason for the falling standard of living. Money buys less because inflation is sky high, and starting a business has become worse and worse, especially after the pandemic. Establishing a business independent of government support or something in the real estate sector has become increasingly unprofitable in Canada, where more than 50% of the economy is made up of government, real estate, and the financial industry. These sectors have formed a monopoly, feeding off each other and driving other industries into less and less profitable situations. If you don't work in banking and finance, real estate, or government, starting a business is extremely hard and less profitable given the inflation of those sectors and extremely high taxes. The inflated real estate market coupled with soaring living costs further compounds the financial strain on residents. While some may perceive certain cities like Calgary as affordable, the reality paints a different picture, with rent prices skyrocketing in recent years even in Alberta. The core issue lies in Canada's lagging productivity, which has persisted despite policy efforts to address it. Factors contributing to this productivity gap include underinvestment in crucial areas like non-residential structures and research and development, along with regulatory and tax barriers hindering innovation. While capital-intensive industries in regions like the energy industry in Alberta have historically driven higher GDP per capita levels, the recent shift away from resource investment has eroded their leadership status. This brings us to Canada's horrible housing crisis, where exorbitant prices and interest rates pose a significant financial burden. The Canadian real estate sector has witnessed an unprecedented surge, propelling home values to unprecedented levels. Prices have doubled in various provinces and seen substantial increases in most others over the past few years. Limited supply and densely populated urban areas pose significant challenges for many Canadians, particularly first-time buyers and renters seeking entry into the market. Significant obstacles arise within the construction sector as well as developers contend with daunting market conditions. These challenges encompass a scarcity of skilled laborers and escalating costs of materials. The surge in prices induced by the pandemic extends to labor equipment and building materials, exacerbating these difficulties. Consequently, builders are compelled to market new homes at significantly elevated prices, intensifying the struggle to secure secure financing, particularly as central banks raise interest rates. Addressing both construction expenses and labor shortages constitutes vital components of a holistic approach to resolving the housing crisis. This year, it is anticipated that home prices will further increase by 5.5%, reaching an average of $843,000 for new homes. Given the current pace of population growth, Canada would require the construction of 170,000 new residences every 3 months to meet demand, a target that is far from being achieved. Cities like Toronto are forecasted to witness a 6% rise in average home prices to $1.2 million. The pressing question remains: where will ordinary Canadians find affordable housing or rental accommodations? As if all this wasn't bad enough, Canada's life expectancy keeps dropping. According to Statistics Canada, the life expectancy of the average Canadian at birth has decreased for 3 consecutive years, dropping from 82.3 years in 2019 to 81.3 in 2022. The data on deaths reveal that New Brunswick experienced the most significant decrease in life expectancy in 2022, declining to 79.8 years from 80.9 in 2021. Over the past 3 years combined, Saskatchewan has witnessed the most substantial decline in life expectancy, decreasing by a full 2 years to 78.5 in 2022 from 80.5 in 2019. There is also a noticeable uptick in deaths among younger age groups, partially attributed to deaths under investigation by coroners or medical examiners, which typically include unintentional injuries such as substance-related toxicity deaths, suicides, and homicides. Canada's lagging performance in terms of standard of living compared to the United States and other advanced economies has people feeling understandably blue, and there's a bleak outlook for Canadian living standards in the foreseeable future. Looking ahead, economic forecasts suggest continued contractions in real GDP per capita for this year, with little improvement expected without fundamental changes to address productivity problems and Canada's disastrous housing situation. If you like this video and want to learn more about what's really going on in Canada, check out this video here. And if this video brought value to you today, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the video. Thanks for watching.